In this video, I'm going to talk to you about a phrase which was coined by a guy called Chris Anderson, who was the editor of Wired magazine, and now he's the CEO, chairman of a number of high-tech startups, including one specialising in AR, VR and drones, really exciting stuff. So he came up with an economic model which is called long-tail economics. So I'm going to translate that into how that impacts on us when we're thinking about helping clients get really savvy about spending a finite budget on things that really matter most. Let's go to the model. So the notion here is, for any level of popularity or demand, there's a tail, there's a high level of interest around what's called the head, and then there's a tail of popularity, in other words, how popular something is, based on, in our sense, the number of search terms that people key in. By the way, this is a model that is an Amazon business model for the number of products that they decide to hold in their own warehouse. And just a quick kind of analogy to help you get your head around this. Amazon, through modeling people's demand and behavior, stock very few items of in other words, low level of popularity, but stock very few in all sorts of places. And the more that they do this, the more they can get really clever about how to optimize space in the warehouses, moving products as little as possible before they end up with a consumer. So this mathematical model helps people in a variety of ways. We're going to use it for digital search and how to beat our competition who are hell-bent on doing things with very popular competitive terms. Let's put that into perspective. Okay, so if we take, again, let's go back to this analogy I used in the previous video of somebody that installs, services, maintains boilers and sells spare parts. Let's think, if we were to ask the question, so what terms in your ideal model would you like to be found for, Mr. Plumber or Miss Plumber? They're likely to tell you without any further qualification, I want to be found for people looking for new boilers or new boiler installations. And with a bit of conversation and refining, we can help get and extract more out of them by using this particular this model. We can say, great, it's good that you want to be found for new boilers, but in there we're probably going to end up, if we were to optimize your digital offer, whether it's through search engine optimization or paid search or even Googling my business for certain terms, you're going to end up with a lot of people who, some of which may not have buying intent. They might be, as I'd said in a previous video, 12-year-old kids that have just come through a project at school, looking at in an environment, looking at condensating boilers, and they're after some pictures, images, or wiki stuff to help them write their next school project. You know, they're not got wallet ready. So we have to kind of look for clues, and that's why I've called this how search terms leave a trail of clues regarding intent. So you know this intuitively, but I think my role is to make you kind of aware of it, because this applies to our customers as well. So if we take the word new boiler, we know that that's a very popular term. It's going to appear in the head, and by definition it's going to be really competitive. So if we look at cost per click, how many clicks before we get a lead, how many leads before we get a sale, it's a bun fight, and there are going to be a lot of big players in there optimizing for those terms. But then if we add the word installation, there's a verb. We want people who install. So now we're narrowing the search. And in fact, if we were to mention a brand or a type, like a condensing boiler rather than an ordinary boiler, and then a derivative of that brand, a model itself with a model number, and then go on to add a city or a near me or a location, and then even a qualifier that says best of, cheapest, or the one with the most trust scores, you know, the stars that you can see in lots of these reputation software providers. Then what we know is, can you imagine if somebody's actually typing in new boiler installation for a Bosch Model 530 in Belfast, and I want to know the ones with the best reputation. Well, it's difficult to believe that they're not looking after, they're not going to get be clicking on some kind of action, some kind of form filling or making a telephone call. So now let's go to the second bit. If we look at the buying funnel, we can now begin to correlate fewer search terms with different stages in a buying funnel. So, there might be one or two exceptions, but if we look at the terms new boiler, they're likely to fall into the awareness. And if we're looking at consideration and brand and derivative, they're starting to look at what are my options as I start to explore who could help me with what I actually want to achieve. By the time they get into the location, city and qualifiers, they're in closer down their buying funnel towards taking an action, and that action be complete a form, it could be make a call, or even if it's an e-commerce offer, some spare parts, it could be a purchase, or even download a brochure, all of which are measurable. So here's the thing, when we're talking to our clients existing and we want to grow their business, or talking to new ones and we want to really understand specifically what we want them to do, let's get them talking about these longer phrases. They're cheaper to buy, there's less competition, they're further down the buying intent funnel towards taking action, so it's a nice sweet spot. And just to end, I'd like to show you this. If surface area of the graph represents the number of inquiries, then what the long tail theory shows is that the collective aggregated area of that long tail is greater than the head itself. So it's a new way of looking at things. It's a way of removing the competition that aren't doing a long tail digital strategy, and perhaps that's something that will help you when you sell. Have fun.